Yeah, hi folks. Yeah, just Gary McPherson again. Yeah, I thought I'd make another video here explaining just a little bit more about the trilogy of the Eight Rings of Thrall that I wrote. I'll tell you a little bit more. Of course, now, there's a lot of twists and turns in there, Sam. And I didn't tell you the whole story. You'd have to read it to understand it, because there's a lot of parts that I did leave out. But I figured, well, I owe you this much, a little more explanation maybe. Now, let me transport myself to New York City. Scotty, beam me up, please. Oh, there we go. Now I'm back in New York again. Right by the Statue of Liberty, you know. I had to beam over there. So, now I can't tell you, this is only part of the story. See, this isn't the whole story. But I thought I'd owe you a little bit more explanation, you know. See, in the end of the Thrall series, in the end of the third part of the trilogy, the Zornians, they went to 1,000 miles to the planet Keltara, and they landed in the desert, and they met the reporter, Shara Land, and she befriended them because she had met Greggorian. She knew about the rings, but they had to get their stories together because, see, General Thrax was looking for her because she quit. She used to work at the Civic Center where General Thrax did, but she didn't like General Thrax because he was like Adolf Hitler. They had a police state over there, and General Thrax controlled the police and everything, and that's why she quit. Now she's a Keltarian. But as the story goes, the Zornians decided to finally go to Amora Prime to meet Greggorian Smith of the Ymar race, where the rings developed in the first place. And they actually met Greggorian. And Greggorian's like a lion creature. He walks on all 4 feet in a robe, but when he stands up, he's 30 feet tall. So they need his help because Karn has become Karn Medgalson who's a Zornian. He's the middle brother of the Zornian trio. Kesh Nor is the senior elder of the planet Zorn. Jarrett Hall Nor is his younger brother, who established the museum at Catland on Thrall to house the books and the scrolls because he found the wrecked ship of the Ymar priests when they crash landed on Thrall. Because the books were like religious, and the rings were like religious symbols to them. That's how they got into like a holy war, sort of. It was the war between the Keltarians and the Ymar, because the Keltarians wanted to steal the rings from them. And then when the Ymar priests fled the war, their ship had been damaged. But they were faster than the Keltarian vessels. So they ended up crash landing on Thrall. And that's when Jarrett went to Thrall as an archaeologist after he left the Zornian Council of Science. He found the wrecked ship of the Ymar on Thrall. And the Ymar let him open the 2 books of Thrallian scrolls to read them, because he could translate them. But Karn could also see. They didn't know that, because Karn's his brother's next to his oldest brother, you see. He's the middle brother, and Karn was seduced by the dark side of the rings. So, as the story goes, so when the Zornians went to Keltara and all those battles, and all the battles they went through on Keltara with Karn and everything, they finally went to Amora Prime, because Amora Prime was in the same system as the planet Keltara. There were only two planets in that system, Keltara and Amora Prime. So they actually went to Amora Prime and finally met Greggorian Smith. Greggorian of the Emar race, because he had to help them out, because Karn was just too powerful with the rings. They needed Greggorian's help, so they finally met him. So Greggorian, when they met in his office there, and they live underground, because Thrax is bombarding Amora Prime with radiation because they have warships, because he wants to make the Emar race extinct. Now they think that their Emar race are dead, but they're not. They live underground on Amora Prime because the radiation levels are too high. But the Amarians, they're okay. They're not affecting them. So Greggorian talks to the Zornians, Goron, Kalos, and Zom. Because Zirsanon wasn't there, he was still back on Zorn, the little baby. He was the youngest member of the genetics team. Now he didn't go with them that time, so he was still on Zorn. 1,000 light years from Amora Prime and Keltara. So Greggorian came up with this plan. He says, well, I have a plan. He says, okay, I'll help you out with Karn, because they're old enemies. They're nemesises, and see, Thrax wants to make the Emar race dead. In fact, he thinks they're dead, but they're not. They're still alive. So Greggorian has this plan, and what happened was he transported Azar right to his office one night. He says, I have a plan, folks. And all of a sudden she fell out of thin air, and she was Greggorian's office, and he took over her mind. So actually Azar, Colonel Sheila Azar, the Keltarian, and that's General Thrax's second in command, he took over her mind. And then when they met in the Azar Park that night, it wasn't Azar, it was actually Greggorian. So he had to challenge Karn to a duel in the park that night. And the Zornians were there too. And they had warships in orbit watching the park. But Greggorian took over Azar's mind, and so she still looked like Colonel Sheila Azar, but she wasn't. She was still in Greggorian's office on Amora Prime. It was actually Greggorian, and he challenged Karn to a duel. See, the Phalan cat that Zom found, little Admiral Zom, the Zornian, see, they're all brothers. They're Zornian brothers, and Dr. Sileron is their mother. And so when they were in the park that night, in the Azar Park, because Greggorian sent out a challenge, says, let's meet in the Azar Park, we'll get this straightened out, or something like that, So Thrax, General Thrax, and Karn go into the Azar Park. And here's Colonel Sheila Azar walking out of the forest or something. But she's not Azar. She's Greggorian of the Emar, right? So Karn challenges, Greggorian challenges Karn to a duel. He said, Greggorian, take the rings off your fingers and let's see who can control them. So he tricks him into taking the rings off. And then Greggorian switched the rings on him. Karn didn't know it, see, until they beamed out. So Greggorian challenged him to a duel because he had become so powerful with the rings that the Zornians couldn't fight him anymore. Really, he was just too powerful. So Greggorian had to help him out. So that's all I can say. I just wanted to make another amendment, a little more explanation about that was the third novel in the trilogy of the Eight Rings of Thrall that I wrote. If you ever read it, I think you'd fall in love with it. You know, it might be a classic someday. You know. I don't know. I was kind of taught by my buddy Rod Serling. You know. All right. Well, you have a good day, and God bless America. And tell everybody hi for me, and I'll try to get this on YouTube for you. All right. Talk to you later. Bye bye.